members to the first Strategy and Policy Committee meeting of 2016. If we're still going, we'll have an afternoon tea break at 3:30. So I'm opening the meeting of the 16th of February. And I'd also like to welcome you, hopefully, well, you should have all met our new GM, Sean Hickey, who is our new GM of Strategy and Communications and will be, I don't know if servicing the committee is the right word, Sean, but will be sitting up at the, he'll take that, sitting up at the top table here for this committee.
So is he not sitting up there today, is he?
No.
Oh, okay.
He's observing today.
That would have been an ease-in, just one item.
It's the stage.
And we only have one item on the agenda. So with that, I'll confirm that the agenda be accepted. I'll move that.
Sorry, can I ask a question about that?
Oh, yes.
Yep. When we come to making decisions on, will we be dealing with this by part or whole? Because there are issues, for instance, where someone might support elements but not all elements.
So I was going to ask ask the committee that we could take it in parts of the bylaw, the policy, and then leave the fees later. So would that suit everybody to do it that way? So do questions on each part on the bylaw, questions on the policy, or we can do it all together.
Thanks.
I mean, I'm easy, whatever. Anyone, any thoughts? Other than Councillor McPherson wishing to do it in parts?
Well, I wasn't necessarily saying that myself, Madam Chair, but I think it's good practice to, at least to identify any issues and separate them out, any contentious issues, I should say.
Yeah.
Could I suggest, Madam Chair, the approach we took in the Business and Investment Subcommittee was to deal with the policy first, simply because it's more relevant, the bylaw sort of follows.
Okay, I was intending to, if you wanted to do it in parts. Okay, so we'll do that. So I've moved that agenda.
I'll second.
Thank you, Your Worship. Is there any discussion or debate? All those in favour? Are there any against? Thank you. Right, declarations of interest. Councillor Green had previously at another meeting declared...
Excuse me, Angela, did you do apologies?
Sorry. Oh, no, I didn't. Sorry. I've received apologies from Councillor Pascoe and Wilson. Are there any other apologies? There are none. I'll move that the apologies be accepted.
Councillor Green, obviously, should you just...
Oh, there's a conflict.
No, it's a conflict. Democracy have told me it's not an apology.
Well, that's an apology.
To also record an apology, Madam Chair.
All right, so that's Pascoe, Wilson and Green.
And the that's council related. So when we do the, for the media, we have the little asterisk, civic duty. In this case, she can't come. Can
I have a seconder for that? Thank you, Councillor Young. All those in favour?
Aye.
Are there any against? It's carried. Right, back to declarations of interest. Councillor Green has, at a previous meeting, declared a conflict of interest on this item, and Democracy have advised that she doesn't need to be present to declare that again. Do we need to move? No, it's just noted. There's no public forum. Right, so the report starts on page 5. Now, this is an adoption report. As the committee will be aware, the Business and Investment Subcommittee have done the submission hearings and deliberations and made a recommendation. So I will first go to the Chair of the Business and Investment Subcommittee, Her Worship the Mayor.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, that's correct that the Business and Investment Subcommittee have been dealing with the review of this policy and bylaw, and councillors will recall that we signed off on a proposal to go out for public engagement, which did happen, and last week we had oral hearings on the written submissions. If we're going to deal with these in terms of the policy first, then the bylaw, there are some comments I'll probably make about the bylaw when we got to that in relation to some changes that have been inserted which have not been through the Business Investment Subcommittee, and I think the report identifies that they arose following the meeting. So I just wanted to make this committee aware that the proposed changes in the bylaw are not ones that came through the Business and Investment Subcommittee. But I can talk more about that when we get to that if you like.
Okay. Thank you, Your Worship. Right, so we've got, if we're going to deal with the policy first, we'll go to questions. We'll take it as the report is read, because there's only a couple of pages in the report on page 5 to 8. So we'll obviously have questions on the report when we're discussing the policy and the bylaw, because obviously there's a crossover there. So the policy starts on page 14. So I will now go to questions of the committee. Oh, just to Julie and Calvin, was there anything you needed to add or update us on? No. No? Okay, so just ready for questions. Councillor Millett.
The definition of busker means any...
Oh, sorry.
Oh, page 14, sorry.
Yeah.
Means any persons performing for voluntary donations in any public place. So, you know, just splitting hairs, what if someone's just not even, hasn't got a hat out and isn't trying to get money? Is busking mean for money?
Correct.
So if you're,
Could you put
if you haven't got a hat out or you're not after money but you're still playing and causing whatever irritation you are if you're asking for money, but not asking for money, is that's not covered in this bylaw?
This is the same definition of busker that exists in the current bylaw we have.
Wouldn't that be, if you're not a busker, then you're creating a public nuisance? Well,
You-
potentially you could, unless you're really, really good.
You could be considered that.
Say that again?
What I'm saying is, if you're not covered under the policy, meet the definition, so therefore you're not a busker, then you could technically be a person creating a public nuisance.
Could be like
Okay, so
some of the bands that we have on the rotunda.
But don't you have a right to speak?
Okay.
Oh, free.
So if someone is causing a nuisance other than because they're singing or playing a guitar or the drums or something outside a restaurant, but they're not asking for money, they wouldn't be considered a busker, but they could still be considered a public nuisance.
They could, although there's no definition of public nuisance.
Or whatever.
But there would be opportunity to actually try and intervene on other circumstances.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions, councillor? Millett?
He will have, don't worry.
Yeah, I know.
Oh, sorry, yeah, I have got a second one. Yeah. First come, first served. Mobile shops, we're talking about a minimum of 2, I think, 2 or 3.
Page, councillor?
Sorry, page 20. Will the policy be on a first come, first served basis in terms of awarding these licences, or will whoever awards a licence issue them in terms of the perceived need for something, a particular activity? Like you might say, we might have that many cafes that we don't need a coffee shop in there, but we might not have anyone selling muffins now that the girl on the swing's gone. So we might say, yep, we won't accept anyone selling coffee, but we might accept someone selling muffins. Or is it first come, first served?
It's not intended to be first come, first serve. Page 27, the last 2 bullet points under 5.1.
Roman numeral 6. Oh, no. Roman numeral 4?
Okay, evidence of how the mobile
5.
shop is relevant, is that what it's talking
Yes,
Oh,
about? Okay.
oh no, that's short.
so there'll be a selection.
So there's a qualitative requirement rather than just a first come, first served?
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
Is that all your questions for now?
That's for the moment, yeah, thank you.
Okay, Deputy Mayor.
Yes, thanks.
Got you.
Chair, I'd just like to signal that I will be proposing an amendment to item 4, mobile shops, at the
Okay.
point that you're ready to.
Okay, we're
forward.
not quite there yet, and the Mayor has signalled a motion when we're ready. So, Deputy Mayor, did you have questions? Any questions? On
The questions really were around the mobile shops, and the questions were really related to how do 2 get approved, because remember there's already 1 existing, so in fact it's 2, with a 3rd one having exemption. How do they get approved? Who wins the draw? What happens if they don't turn up, that they've got the spot but don't use it? and also rights of renewal. Who decides on that? Is that about performance, cleaning the site, behaviour, a whole host of issues? What are those issues, and do they have the right to on-sell the right, whereas the existing mobile shop, the potato shop out here, once it's sold or goes out of operation, that's it for their business. So could a mobile shop, if it got a permit, be on-sold?
So your question was, could you on-sell your permit? In my view, the answer would that would be no.
No.
Okay, the second thing is renewal.
Sorry,
the
can I
ability-
just jump in there? If that's in your view, does that just mean that the bylaw perhaps should be clarified to say that?
7.6 of the
Does say
bylaw
that,
does
yeah.
say that.
Does say that.
7.2,
Does say
Well,
permits
it says
aren't
that,
transferable.
that's right. So 7.2 of the bylaw.
Okay.
So there was the resale issue, which you've answered, the right of renewal, how's that decided? And how's it decided for the original allocation of the up to 3 or effectively 2
Plus the
vacancies?
potato police.
And where?
Trying to deal with the last part of your question there, in relation to, sorry, I got lost then with your question.
So first one is the right of sale, and you've answered that. The second one is how do the 2, because there is already one approved, how do the 2 extra traders get selected? Do we run an ad and then there's a process around appointment, or do they, it's just the first, as Councillor Melton
If you
says,
go
first?
to
4.5.
Schedule 3, number 0.5, that outlines that, the answer to that question. And also page 20 under 4.5, number 6, 7 and 8 outlines the timelines for having applications in for consideration for each of the 6-month periods for which the permits will exist for.
I wonder if I could be assistance to the Deputy Mayor. In simple terms, this is suggesting that if we have up to, we allow up to 3, that doesn't mean to say if we've only got 1, we actively go out and get them. We don't do that. I mean, if there are applications that come in, then we look at those applications against the criteria and we only allow up to 3. The other question, your Deputy Mayor, was around renewal of those applications, and I'm picking that renewal is just when the 12 months lapses, it's treated as a new application again. Is that correct? There's no extra criteria applied because you
No right
have
of
been
renewal.
existing. No right of renewal, yeah. So it's new applications each time.
Yes.
To just clarify one other point that the Deputy referred to, he's using the number. The number in the policy is up to 3. There is a separate issue of a person who sits currently with an exemption as to whether council considers that is part of or is not part of the 3.
Well, we should have some clarity, Chair, on that.
Well,
It's either
have
3
clarity.
or it's 4.
No, we did have clarity in the Business and Investment Subcommittee because we particularly asked that question. And what conclusion did we come to in that? Because we talked about this in the B&I.
It's been changed since, isn't it?
We didn't come to a conclusion, Your Worship. There was an amendment put forward that was lost for want of a seconder about that. So my impression or my opinion at the time had been that the other person sat outside
That's right.
the realms of
So
that.
that's where we landed on that in the Business Investment Subcommittee. But you're absolutely right. There was discussion about whether the 3 included the permanent one with the exemption or it didn't. So if people want to debate that here, I mean, they could move amendments about that. Sure.
But the as it stands now, the potato van is outside of it's excluded completely from the bylaw. So,
Under your current bylaw, they are excluded.
yeah,
However, the council needs to resolve if they wish them
Yeah,
to
no,
be
if we
open.
want to change that, obviously we have to resolve that, we understand that. But this at the moment is allowing up to 3,
Yes.
which means at the moment 3 new people. This is not the potato lady, correct?
Correct, that's my interpretation.
Okay. Okay. Councillor McPherson.
Yes, bottom of page 6 regarding the busking conditions time change proposed. What evidence came forward to say that it should be changed from 11 p.m. to 8:30 p.m. as the deadline?
Sorry, that was for the
Busking.
the
time.
busking?
Yeah.
That was a resolution from Business and Investment.
So, yeah, okay, what evidence came forward to support or argue for that? Or was it just a view?
There was an overwhelming majority of the submitters who made submissions. They were against any extension of busking hours.
So, are you saying that the current one is 8:30?
Correct.
Okay. And what was the reason, apart from them being against it? Can you give that to me in a nutshell?
Sorry, it was came a resolution out of B&I after the hearings.
Sorry, I'm obviously not speaking English. What was the reason, what were reasons in a
microphone, sorry.
nutshell that were given?
Thank you.
Was it go better if I'm speaking louder, does it?
No, but we can hear you.
What were the reasons, in a nutshell, given to the committee for not wanting it to be extended to 11 p.m?
So the residents within the city centre area had put in submissions about their concerns about buskers being available until 1 a.m. And
Okay,
the
so
subcommittee debated that and resolved to move back to the current times.
where does the 1 a.m. come in? Because it's not mentioned here, where it seems to be a
11.
debate between 11 p.m. and 8:30 p.m.
The original was 1 a.m. That's what it went out for public consultation on. And the feedback that on the submissions was that people were fearful of additional noise, particularly for those with inner city living, throughout the later part of the evening. There was also some concern from some within the hospitality industry regarding the impact of buskers out on the footpath outside their premises.
Bus use.
Buskers.
Okay, so where does the 11 p.m. come in? I'm looking at the report here.
Sorry.
It's not, yeah.
The 11 p.m. was the proposal that was put forward to the B&I subcommittee. So the original proposal that went out for consultation had the 1 a.m. And the 11 p.m. was what was recommended out of the consultation.
Because of the initial submissions you had, the
And-
staff
yes,
proposed 11
correct.
p.m.
Well,
Okay, now I
To be honest,
trying
Dave, also, I think it was John Lawrenson suggested that as a compromise. A couple had suggested, well, if you want to extend it, 11 would be better. So I think that's where the 11 sort of...
Yeah, I was just trying to work out
Yes.
the different elements.
Yes, that's right. And we did talk about that in the B&I, and the staff, I think, were finding a middle ground. And then the B&I committee said, well, a lot of the submitters obviously had an issue about times and noise and listening to some of the verbal submissions. So I think it was me that moved to a resolution, let's just leave it as it is, being cognisant of some of the comments about it. Yeah.
And could I then ask, in relation to those sort of points, it's a related question, what are the noise limit hours for central city entertainment in terms of music, say, that can be heard beyond the boundaries of the property? Are there any regulations there, isn't it?
There's no specific regulations. It relates to the noise control services who would attend any complaint and make an assessment on the time, place and circumstances.
And they have I don't know whether it's a rule of thumb or a regulation that relates to 10:30 being a sort of a threshold for needing to reduce noise then? I don't know the technical terminology.
No.
Certainly in residential.
Not in the CBD
No.
you're
Okay.
referring to.
It's 24 hours citywide
Correct.
now. It used to be that 10:30, but it's
Okay.
24 hours citywide, so people are able to ring noise control in the morning. And all the noise levels are set in the district plan.
So anyone annoyed by a busker's noise at
Any time of
midday
day, yeah.
could ring up and do that
They could.
anyway? Yeah.
Correct.
Thanks.
Councillor Young.
Thank you, Madam Chair. On page 16, 1.4.10, the $2 million public liability insurance, that's applied to the restaurant owner who put outdoor dining, right? And if I look at the mobile shop one on page 27, why is the difference, the public liability insurance to a minimum of 1 million? Why is the difference?
Good question.
Should they be the same or?
It should be the same. That's something I haven't picked up.
Okay, so it will be 2 million.
It should match what it is for the outdoor dining.
So 2
All right.
million.
And further question, if you look to page 26, 3.1.4, I guess, details of public liability insurance for the street market stores or permit. So it hasn't mentioned an amount there. So what sort of details of insurance they need to provide?
That would have some dependence on the nature of what it was that they were doing. But you would expect it to be in $1 million, which would be the base we would be looking at.
So this for the market, but what about one-off event, like a day event, and they apply for permit? So is that applied for public liability insurance as well?
Anything that they're doing on public land should be covered by public liability insurance.
That will put a lot of difficulties in those one-day events down in Garden Place.
It's also about protecting council and that the person who's responsible for running the event has some obligations.
It's very cheap and
It's
pretty
not
cheap
expensive insurance to
get.
obtain.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right, and further question, that's on the enforcement on page 23. You notice the enforcement 1, 2, 3 there, that's a first bridge failure and remedy and all those. What about for those like a day event? So what sort of enforcement process you're going to have? Or shut down the event, or? I don't think there will be time for written warning.
Whereabouts are you on page 23, Councillor?
Page 23,
Yep.
enforcement.
Just in general, that question.
Yeah, just a general.
Yeah.
But, I mean, some of the permit is for like a month or 6 months or a year.
But you're asking in
a day-
context
a
of
one-day
an
one.
event.
Yeah,
what
an event on
the
a one-day
enforcement be
event.
if there was a breach.
So if there's a breach, yes. What sort of process you have?
There would be one where we'd be going and talking with the people with a view to trying to reach a resolution to end the matter.
And if not,
And look, if someone has been issued with a permit, it is within council's rights to revoke that permit.
so you have the power to shut down the event.
You always have the power to revoke
Yeah.
the permit
Yeah.
if they are not fulfilling the conditions of the permit.
Yeah.
But the preferred option is to go through for a long-standing thing of doing it in a graduated model, with firstly giving them a verbal warning, a written warning, and then if they carry on, looking to consider revocation. However, we can move straight to revocation if someone is failing to meet the conditions required of the permit.
Thank you.
Your Worship?
If you're finished with the questions, I'll move in relation to the policy only.
Okay, no, still have a few questions here, and then I'll come to you. I just have a couple, and then I'm going to go to Councillor Mallett. Let me just find all my little notes here. Just for clarification, on page 14, point 3 there, we've included principles. Well, I know we've got the purpose there, we've included principles. I may be wrong, but I thought we were moving away, including principles in policies, but that may have been just for certain policies. I thought the Local Government Act was sort of frowned upon including principles, because when I read these, all of these principles are actually included in some of our strategies anyway.
Yes, Chair, you are correct that in the policies we are now putting forward, we are moving away from those principles. However, this policy was developed before we commenced that process, and therefore we have not altered that.
Okay.
If I may, sorry, Chair, because it did come through the BNI subcommittee and it wasn't an issue raised. My recollection was that because this policy has some aspects of, could be perceived as some aspects of punitive requirements or rules, there was a desire to have some principles in it because it sent the message about it was more positive focused than negative focused,
yeah.
and that there are some discretionary decisions that have to be made as part of the policy that staff have to make, and the principles would provide some framework to enable them to make that assessment.
Yeah.
Because they've got to make some judgment calls, or Kelvin's got to make some judgment calls. So
That makes
hopefully
perfect
that
sense.
might make
Yeah.
sense.
Thank you. Just on page 15, you've got in the table up there, you've got mark it twice. You'll need to delete one of those columns. And also just above it, which follows on in mobile shop, the second bullet point doesn't make any sense. It does not include any vehicle used to transport goods that have been ordered for delivery. It's ordered. That will need to be changed. Now, I have raised, just on there, I have raised this, and I did raise this early on when we farmed this work out to the BNI subcommittee. And I'm not going to die in a ditch over it, but sometimes these things, loopholes appear and end up creating problems. But where it says, hang on, let me just find it, where it says mobile shop, a vehicle from which goods are offered or exposed for sale, I remember I asked the question around the definition of vehicle, and could this mean that I could park my car somewhere if I had the permit and sell stuff out of my boot? And I raised that question. I looked on NZTA's website and they have cars and bikes and scooters that are vehicles, but they talk about those as passenger vehicles. So again, I'm not going to die over the ditch, but I wonder if it would not be better to say a vehicle excluding a passenger vehicle and then continue, whether that might just stop the car boot sale. I mean, I'm sure if someone came to you with a permit and saying, I'm going to sell it out of the boot of my car and I want to be located in Hood Street, you'd say no. But there's nothing in here to say that you could say no unless you put excluding passenger vehicle in there.
I'm not sure I actually concur with that suggestion, because a passenger vehicle could well be used for the same purpose, and in fact a motorcycle could, if it was kitted out sufficiently, you could actually operate as a mobile shop selling something off the back of a motorbike with a hot plate on it.
You'd be really creative, wouldn't you?
You would be very creative, but...
Okay. Yep.
It's an innovative
so that's
mobile shop, isn't it?
Yeah, isn't it? But it could be quite cool. They could be little tuk-tuk ones. On page 19, Roman numeral 5, merchandise displays are to be removed at the end of a Does that take into account the Hamilton Central Business Association's piano? Would that be called a merchandise? Because I know we had some issues a little while back.
No.
Okay, so...
No, merchandise is offering goods for sale.
Okay, so where does the piano fit in? Is that a sign? Does the piano not fit in? Pianos, I should say.
Arguably, it would come in under the new provision of other activities on the footpath.
Ah, okay, under other, okay.
Yeah, I agree.
Because they currently have permits, don't they, for their pianos?
Correct.
Yeah, okay. Just a couple more questions. Page 20, 4.5, Roman numeral 2. This is around mobile shops. They will be granted a permit for a maximum period of 6 months only. That's each time though, isn't it? It's not one person can have 6 months and then they have to go away and it's someone else's turn.
That was the intention.
Okay.
What was the intention?
That would be a permit for 6 months, and at the end of that, you've done your time. That gives someone else the opportunity to, in fact...
Because I don't think that's what Angela... Yeah.
No. So what if they were really good and great for the area and...
Well, they could reapply.
People love it.
No, but Calvin's just saying they can't.
No, they won't be able to...
They won't be able to
look to have it extended out beyond that. They could make a fresh application.
Oh, no, that's what I was asking. They can make a fresh application for 6 months. I think that should say for 6 months at a time, not 6 months only. That would be my...
But that comes back, Chair, to the word renewal.
Yeah, yeah.
An expectation that it might or might not be renewed.
Yeah.
Take the word only.
Yeah. I noticed the Mayor who's going to have a motion, she's making notes. Just on page 21, busking, no bus, just in general, It doesn't say where they can locate, so can buskers locate anywhere?
That's a deliberate ploy that, in keeping with the other major cities in the country,
Yeah.
where areas are not designated as buskers, and that people can busk anywhere in the public spaces, and on the assumption that if it's wanted and warranted and they are good, they will make money. If not, they will get no money and they will leave and go somewhere else.
Okay. And just on Roman numeral 3 there on 5.2.1, buskers is permitted to remain in a single location, not permitted to remain in a single location for longer than 2 hours. As a single location means I could stand outside a shop in a location and then move 5 feet and carry on.
In theory, although we'd have an expectation that if you were intending to be your area,
Yeah.
you would at least be having some engagement with the shop owner.
Okay, yeah. And on that, just further down on hawkers' conditions, 5.3.1 Roman numeral 3, shop doorways must be kept clear. So if I'm hawking, I can be, I'm not, am I selling something, or can I be preaching something, like preaching whatever my message might be? That's a hawker, isn't it?
Either or.
Okay, so shop doorways must be kept clear, but if I'm preaching a message that might be not disturbing, because I know, peace and safety and nuisance and all that, but perhaps that the shopkeeper is not happy with that person. Perhaps they feel that person hawking is keeping their customers away. So they might be preaching their message not in the doorway, but 2 feet from the doorway. So what happens there?
The reason for having that even included, we have very, very few. I think we have less than 2 or 3 hawkers in Hamilton, and I think you'll find hawkers are in fact, I'll just check some advice, not in the CBD. Yeah, hawkers are prohibited from being in the central city. So we're talking about outlying areas in the city only.
Okay.
And in fact, they are permitted, and if there is an issue and they're not complying, we will merely revoke their permit, and they have no authority to be doing anything then.
Okay, because I see straight underneath it says when visiting a premises, a hawker must leave immediately if requested to do so. But that's visiting as in stepping onto that property. It's not standing outside. Okay. Okay, we'll do permit fees later. Councillor Mallett, back to you for the question.
Thank you. Just a question of definition and then some questions of principle. I'm talking on page 29, the fees issue. We talk about...
Oh, sorry, can we leave the fees? We'll do policy, bylaw, and then
Okay.
do the fees separately?
Yep.
Because there's some options there to discuss. So do you have anything else on the policy? No. Okay.
No, thank you.
Councillor Tooman.
Just a point of clarification, if I may. If we go to Schedule 4, which is the map of the CBD, and you look at 4.5, we're allowed 3 permits to be operated within that, what I call a hatched area, okay? Does that also cover the extensions of Elmer Street, Sappermore Jones, London and Ross Trevor as well?
No.
So you can actually park in Sappermore Jones Street or place and still without a permit, would that be right?
That is the existing, this is the repeat of the existing one now, which for our existing bylaw is that same map.
You need a permit though, Councillor Toomer.
Yeah,
I think you said without a permit, you still need a permit.
But you can be in the extensions of Sappermore
Yep.
Jones and the bottom of Elmer Street currently and have a mobile shop set up in there, for example, and provided you've got a permit, and
Yes.
that's
Yeah.
perfectly legal.
So then you could have actually more than 3 mobile shops within the CBD?
Well, it depends on you. The central city, which was called City Heart previously under the bylaw, is that area defined in your shaded area. Now, if you want to push out or extend the boundaries of what you are calling now the central city, we can push it wider and cover the area, but that is the repeat of the same geographic area we have covered now.
So there'd be nothing to stop me from setting up as long as I've got a permit, to set up a coffee cart and that sort of stuff in Sappermore Jones, another one on Elmer Street, and continue down through the road.
That exists now.
Yep, okay. Good opportunity, isn't it?
Right, are there any further questions on the Councillor McPherson?
Just your definition of busking, is that someone singing no matter how badly, or is it someone standing out, and I've actually seen this, one of the living statues with a hat they're collecting as well. Is that regarded as busking?
Yes, it is. And,
What-
and
so
there is no test in any council busking conditions that I can find about a test for someone's singing ability or otherwise. I have had a couple I've asked to sing a few tunes for me in the reception area of council. It's a bit like Garden Plays Idol.
There wouldn't be any money there though.
They didn't get a permit either.
Okay, doesn't look like there's any, Councillor Forsyth and then Councillor King. Questions on the policy?
Oh, okay, sorry. No, I've got a bylaw question.
Okay, we'll get to that one. Councillor King?
Oh, sorry, no, that was one of them.
No,
Can I just refer back to the 1.4.10, the public liability insurance to a minimum of 2 million for,
What page are you, mate?
oh,
When-
sorry,
16.
16. So I see that, but I remember at the subcommittee meeting, I did ask about the $1 million public liability insurance for mobile traders. And look, I understand, I think there needs to be some consistency around both. But, and you've just said that that public liability insurance isn't expensive, but can you tell me what the difference, or would you have any idea what the difference between $1 million cover and $2 million cover would be?
I've got no idea, I'm sorry.
And the reason I ask that is because I'm supportive of mobile traders and I want to enable rather than create more barriers for them, and I see that, as I understood from the subcommittee meeting, that $1 million was achievable or normal, and now that it's been proposed that it's 2, I want to understand what that actually would mean for a mobile trader.
Actually, I can't answer that other than to say every outdoor dining permit, even for someone who only has 2 tables and chairs set up outside, has to have it. It's about protecting the city. And so I don't see that the liability will be any different for a mobile trader operating within the central city.
Okay, that sort of half answers my question. I understand the intent of what you're saying, but it doesn't still help me what that actually means. And did you say, Madam Chair, that we're going to be dealing with the cost implications?
yeah, we'll do the bylaw, we'll do questions on the bylaw next and then the fees. Councillor Forsyth, have you finished questions on
Yes, just
policy?
Yep.
Yep, so Councillor King.
On page 30,
Council cannot set a fee based on economic comparison.
6 to bullet point 3. Could you elaborate on that?
I understood the chair wanted to deal with the fees separately.
Well, we're asking questions on the policy.
Yes, but we're going to do the fees after, because there's options on the permit fees.
I think that's best kept to the fees.
Yeah. I mean, I know it relates, obviously, clearly it relates to the policy, but if we can just do that later, that would be easier. So,
Excuse me.
Councillor King, did you have other questions on the policy? Just park the fees one for a few minutes.
So are we not going to vote on this first?
Vote on what first?
Are we going to vote on these separately?
Yes. We'll do the the mover of the motions who worship the mayor, and she's indicated she has a motion for the policy. Then we'll do the bylaw, and then we'll dispose of that, and then we can do the fees, because
So how
the
can we
fees
vote?
are an attachment and don't sit, and
And
fees
the
can be
amendment.
changed at any time, is that
How
correct?
can we vote on something if we're not allowed to ask questions about the policy? This is directly in the policy.
Well, these are the fees, and that's what we agreed at agenda setting, and at agenda, and at confirmation, I didn't hear anyone disagree at that point, so I'm reticent to change how we're
Sorry,
doing it at the
Chair,
moment.
there is the amendment that I signalled.
Yes, yeah, and an amendment's on the table. So, Councillor King, do you have other questions you can ask on the policy?
Yeah, I do.
Yeah, great.
I'm not comfortable voting on this until we've talked about the fees, though, because
Okay.
it's all
Well, oh, no, we haven't, well,
Okay, just so you know. Okay,
we can
why are we letting mobile shops into the CBD?
leave the vote.
Sorry?
Why are we letting mobile shops into the CBD?
It was put out for public consultation. The overwhelming majority of the
No,
respondents.
hang on, it was already in there when it was put out, wasn't it?
Sorry?
When you went out to the public, the mobile shops had already been proposed at that stage,
It was a proposal for consultation, yes.
so they were part of the document
Mhm.
that went out. So where did the idea come from?
Councillor, this is about the fourth time you've asked me the same question,
But
and I'm
the-
going to repeat the
Hang
same
on.
answer I've given.
Stop. The people who are here are different people than who are in the subcommittee.
Sorry, what, councillor?
This is the first time I've asked questions today
You've previously asked me the same question,
in this meeting.
and not in the BNI. Previously, I'm giving you the same response, which is there has been a interest since I've been in council. A number of people have expressed an interest in having mobile shops in the CBD. That when the policy comes up for renewal or for review, it seems to me is the appropriate time to put it out for public consultation to get a sense of what the public view on such a move is.
Do you consider it's fair to let mobile shops move into the city centre when they're not paying rates, insurance?
No, Councillor King, sorry, I'm not going to allow that question of staff. We ask staff to do this work, and they have explained that over the years this mobile shops have come up. It's not Calvin's job to give him his opinion on whether he thinks we should include or not include, so don't ask that question. So carry on. I've got you, Philip.
How does a mobile shop that's selling food get an exemption from not having toilet facilities like any other shops who sell food have to provide? What do they have to provide toilets,
No,
washrooms?
but they don't in any other location they operate across the city either,
That's right.
Take away food?
correct?
Restaurants do, who sell food.
It's no different from any other mobile shop operating across the city in terms of the requirements they're are required to have in place.
But a shop that's paying rent, rates and insurance, who's selling food, as like a restaurant or a cafe, do they have to provide toilets?
But this, we're not talking about a cafe, we're talking about a mobile shop. The mobile shop conditions applied inside the city would be the same as anything at the mobile shop that operates out of the CBD. The same conditions, they are not required to provide toilet facilities.
I think the key here, Councillor, is that there's no legal requirement for these types of premises to provide those. It's ultimately comes down to a council discretion, and the policy is the discretion that council has, and that is the decision of this council as to whether you choose to have mobile shops or not. If you choose to have them, you don't have to legally provide the things that you're asking. The staff
I
to
might be wrong as well, but I don't think I am. Fixed businesses, cafes, there's nothing to say they have to provide a restroom for their customers either. It's just most do because it's good service. And I'm pretty sure, if we had a district plan person here, I'm pretty sure actually that's, oh, there she is, Deborah.
Under the district plan, there's no requirement. There may be under the building.
Yeah. I don't know that there is, but I've been into cafes in the city that don't have restrooms, which is odd, but anyway. Sorry, councillor, carry on. Pretty sure you don't have to. Councillor King?
Yep. I'm just surprised because I've set cafes up and I've always had to put toilets in them. So, but like Deborah says, it may be under the Building Act. And of course, a mobile shop doesn't have to have a building permit, does it?
Correct.
So they're exempt from putting toilets in.
No, there's no requirements under our part of the involvement that requires him to have a toilet.
So if you're setting up a cafe to sell food, the Building Act will make you put in toilets.
I can't answer that.
No, Deborah just says, I think. But what you're saying, Deborah, is that it's, if you're setting up a cafe under the Building Act, you'd have to put in toilets.
I said I'm in the process of checking that.
Right, okay.
What I said was there is no requirement under the district plan for public toilets in restaurants.
Except for a licensed cafe, licensed to provide alcohol.
Not under the district plan, though.
So a licensed cafe, to get clarity, is not required to provide a disabled toilet or a unisex toilet for its customers. Is that correct?
That would be my understanding.
Not under the district plan, I think Deborah's saying.
Checking. Look at her check.
Deborah, is it possible to get someone here to, yeah,
She's
so can we just,
Checking, wait for her.
So
Sorry,
let's
Chair, but, you know,
yeah,
she said, I'm checking.
did.
Why don't we just wait till she
Yep.
checks? Instead
Okay.
of all jumping in and
Okay.
giving our interpretation?
All experts.
On bathrooms, we should be. Frequent users.
So-
Deborah, do you have an answer now?
I just
Great.
don't know whether I can see it.
Okay. In large text.
Okay. Buildings in respect of which requirement for provision of access
Access
and
and-
facilities
yep.
for persons with disabilities apply.
See?
The building in respect for which the requirement of the provision for access and facilities for persons with disabilities apply are without limitations as follows. Land, sea, air transport, terminals and facilities and interchanges, whether wholly on land or above, public toilets wherever situated, banks, childcares, kindergartens, daycares, commercial buildings and premises for buildings and professional purposes, including computer games. I'll cut to the chase here.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Restaurants, bars, cafes and catering
Restaurants,
facilities.
bars, cafeterias and catering facilities.
So it is listed in the Building Act. Nothing in there that says mobile shops though.
Well, hang on. Can you read that last piece again, please? Cafes.
Restaurants, bars, cafeterias and catering facilities.
So what's a mobile shop that's selling food? Deborah, you're the planner.
It's not a building, a mobile shop.
It's a vehicle.
And that was from the Building Act.
Just going to say, is there
That-
legislation
that
that
was
governs
out of-
toilets and vehicles?
That's the building,
Building
Schedule 2 in the Building Act.
Thank you.
we could deal with
Okay. Do you have further questions, councillor?
In Victoria Street, at the moment, the gap between roadside furniture is 1.5 metres, but this policy is changing it to 2 metres.
No. Currently, all of the central city, with the exception of Victoria Street, is covered by a 2-metre wide clearway. I'm assuming you're talking about clearways.
Yeah.
The current existing for Victoria Street, both sides, is 1.7. The recommendation was for a clearway of 2 metres city-wide.
Do you know why it was 1.7 originally?
No.
Random number.
Has it been like that for many years?
Well, it's been like that for the life of the existing bylaw.
So by changing the bylaw to increase that to 2 metres, I understand it would help people manoeuvre through between the tables better. will that affect the restaurant owners who have street furniture?
I'm probably not qualified to discuss that, to talk on that point as to whether it would. There was evidence given at the B&I hearings that from one restaurateur who suggested that it would. There was a suggestion about having to buy some new furniture. I had an alternative solution. You could simply remove one chair and reach the same result.
The chair on the end of the table?
Correct.
So you're quite comfortable that there's the furniture that's there will fit without that end chair on the table?
No, I am not competent to be able to give you that, make that disclosure, because every cafe or restaurant along there has different sets of furniture with different things. This is about having a standardisation that wherever you went in the city, you could have an expectation that you would have a clearway that was the same, whatever size that is.
So how long has this bylaw been in place?
2009.
And what was in place before that in relation to this?
I don't know.
It would be quite handy to know the history of that particular element, because it's different from others.
Wasn't 2009 when we allowed for the first time dining on the footpaths? Or was it way before that?
It was earlier than that.
It was earlier than that, okay.
We've had it.
Never that long though, eh?
No, it hasn't been.
No, and
Hasn't been
I
like 10
recall
years
those
or
markers
anything.
on the footpath went in around about the same time. The little,
I think it's a fairly.
Definitely before 2009. It would be handy, given the
Was it?
debate we've had, to be able to have some information at least definitive on that.
Why?
Good point. Why?
There's no difference at all. Decide what you want to do now.
Okay,
So for 7 years, we've had the policy in place. Have you had issues during that 7 years?
Multiple times. Yes, it's a regular occurrence. The principal difference is that it's when the tables and chairs are in use. If you have 1.7 clearway and you have tables either side and people sit down and then move back into the clearway, you've potentially lost upwards of well over half a metre. So you're down to about a metre or 1.2 metres in terms of a clearway.
So is this 300 mils that you're taking extra going to fix the problem?
It's going to make us consistent with the other major metropolitan cities in New Zealand. We took advice, I researched what they're doing in Wellington, Christchurch, Dunedin, Rotorua, Tauranga, and they all had 2 metres or greater in terms of their clearway, up to 2.4 in some places.
So the streets that we have at the moment that already have 2 metres,
That's everywhere except Victoria Street in the city.
you don't have any issues with clearways in those areas? You haven't had any complaints with those other areas?
We will continue to have them all over the place. The difference is this bylaw, the recommendation of this bylaw includes the words when in the tables and chairs when in use. So we've made it really, really clear that it's the 2 metres when the table and chairs are in use. So there is no misunderstanding from anyone who is operating a premise about how much they're entitled to have in terms of the footpath.
Thank you.
right, Councillor Young.
Just a further question to the public liability insurance. I just want to make myself clear. Now, for all the restaurant or caterer or providing food, based on the food permit or food license, there is a criteria they have to have the public liability insurance, 2 million, right?
No, the public liability insurance that we're talking about here is for those who are using the outdoor dining facility. That is, they're using a portion of the council footpath.
Okay, so that means they have to buy extra other than the food permit when they have to pay buy $2 million insurance, right?
If it's a condition of obtaining a permit for use outdoor dining and use the footpath, you must produce an insurance evidence that you have insurance of liability insurance of $2 million.
So if they have that from the food permit, that 2 million applies to this one as well, so they don't have to duplicate.
Sorry,
because as far as I know, when you obtain a food permit or food license, you need to have public liability insurance as well, in order to operate a restaurant selling food. Is that right?
Any other insurance that a facility has is a personal thing for them and their business decisions. What council is saying is currently is if you are operating on the footpath, which is the use of that public space, you are required to have a liability insurance of $2 million. That's different to any other insurance you might have for inside your premise for your own liability insurance for any other business you operate inside the premise.
I'm not quite sure here. I'm still not clear.
I think what Councillor Young is asking is, I think this is it, is you don't have to go and get another lot of public liability insurance if you've already got it and it covers the space.
Correct.
Yes. So as long as you've got evidence that you do have that cover, then you're fine. I think that's what.
And that means for the mobile shop, if they're selling toys, they still have to buy the insurance, right? Not selling food.
Yes. Yep.
Okay.
So it doesn't apply whether they've got tables and chairs or not. It's just the fact that people are going to be standing on the footpath outside.
They'll be using the public space.
Okay.
And so there is a risk or a liability to council potentially when people are gathering in that public space.
Is that all your questions, Councillor Young?
Thank you.
Yes, Councillor Gallagher.
So just repeat for me again, the mobile shop, the fee again on a weekly basis? Because I found the old potato one, 100. How much are they paying? Will they pay?
The quantum of the fees, we're going to cover the quantum of the fees.
Because it's up for debate.
We haven't got to the quantum of the fees yet, Councillor Gallagher. We're going to talk about the quantum shortly.
So the B&I haven't recommended it?
No. The Chair wishes to deal with the quantum of fees separate to the policy.
The B&I subcommittee did discuss fees and asked staff to have a look at that, but we didn't fix a fee or really get into that.
Or recommend one.
But I think Councillor Gallagher's question is, what do they currently pay? Because we have a permit at the moment.
It's $120, isn't it?
It's there. It's at the back.
I think on page 29, I think, is where the
29,
information.
120.
But,
yeah.
So basically, okay. So you've got the table there, the option. I've seen what the old potato people pay. So you're proposing that's a separate discussion?
Just because there's options there, Councillor, we'll dispose of questions for the policy first. We'll move on to the bylaw, then we'll do the fees. And Councillor King has suggested we leave the voting till we've disposed of the questions on all of it. So I'm happy to do that.
Okay,
because I think that would be helpful. So no further questions, Councillor Gallagher? No. Okay. I think that's disposed of the questions on the policy. Right, so the bylaw is on page... Where is the bylaw? On page 9. And I'll just go to Her Worship the Mayor as Chair of B&I Subcommittee. Is there anything that needed to be addressed there, Your Worship?
So just reinforcing that we didn't actually in the B&I Subcommittee deal with page 11 and page 13 where there's been some inclusions of additional wording. The B&I Subcommittee approved the bylaw unchanged and that has subsequently been added. But I guess the background to this, I think we discussed at the B&I Subcommittee, was that in 2009 the Council made a resolution to permit the Old English baked potato van to occupy public space in this central city. And I guess that was a way around not being permitted to do that activity under the bylaw. So when it comes time to put forward a motion, I'm happy to do that, and it will be a motion that I guess carries on that opportunity, but only by way of council resolution and not in the bylaw.
Okay. All right, thank you.
And I mean, I'm relaxed about whether it carries on or not.
Yeah.
It's just that in 2009 the council said, you could sort of operate and stay there unless you sold your business or shut up shop.
Okay. Right, thank you. Are there questions on the bylaw?
Can I just raise a question on the potato thing? Talks about it sells or it has to trade continuously. and this is splitting hairs, I know, but what if they go away for 6 months for a holiday or something like that? Does that taken into account? How do you, because if you're gonna have something like that, you've just got to deal with contingencies that will come up.
My understanding is the current vendor has been in place there since the late 1980s or early 1990s, and has been a continuous presence there.
So
he's
you're
due for a
saying
holiday.
They could have a potato famine.
Well, that might be, councillor Mallett, if they're not ceasing trading or closing their business, then I guess they
Yeah.
can come
Okay,
back.
so if it's just a temporary closure for sickness or holiday or something like
We could maybe address that.
that, okay. Just when you sort of carve a person out and give them special treatment, I'm not saying there's anything wrong with what that's doing. You do have to make sure that people can see, you know, it's quite clear what you're doing and transparent.
To be fair to the vendor, every time the vendor has closed down, it's normally over a Christmas, New Year period or the likes, or taking a break, they do write to council to advise council of an impending absence and the new start date or recommencement.
Okay.
Councillor Mallett, I think at the time that resolution was passed, the council was Irish. That was why.
Had a famine.
Potato. I particularly love potato. Are there any other questions on the bylaw? Councillor Forsyth.
That's on penalties, page 12. It does seem excessive that summary conviction or a fine not exceeding $20,000.
That's a requirement of Local Government Act to put that. It's up to $20,000, and that's a standard out of Local Government Act.
Still excessive.
We're still required to have it in there.
Remember we had that big long debate about skateboarding when it's the
that's right.
same thing,
That's right.
up to 20,000. We thought that was excessive.
Sorry, just a point on that.
Yep.
though. Just because the Local Government Act says that's the maximum that you can have, where does it say in the Local Government Act that you must have a fine stated of up to 20,000? Could we not say, okay, our maximum's 10,000? As I often hear this when staff talk about Local Government Act provisions, and they, to me, when I see the wording in the Local Government Act, it doesn't say you're required to have that maximum. It just says you've got to fit within it or be consistent with it. That's the implication, I would have thought.
That is, in fact, I think the councillor is correct. It is the maximum fine is outlined in the Local Government Act of $20,000. Likewise, it would be within the prerogative of council to decide at a lesser level. However, it is the norm in any legislation to outline what the maximum penalty is and state it as the maximum.
And I don't have a problem with that as long as it's clear that it's our choice up to that level. I think that's the key point I take out of Councillor Forsyth's question.
I can't find anything quickly.
Actually, I think the wording would even be better if it said up to instead of not exceeding. Presumably, if we were to change that, it's a bylaw change, and then that would be a consultative process, and et cetera, et cetera.
I do believe the wording as it is, though, is how it appears in the Local Government Act.
But
Yeah,
it
but we
leaves
don't
up
have
to, though, doesn't it?
The wording is, I'm just looking at the Act, but the wording is consistent with the Act, but I think Councillor McPherson does raise doesn't preclude, as I'm looking at it, that we can't specify it to be, as you say, less than 20,000. We could set it a...
I'm not trying to
No.
do that.
I think your take on that is how I read it quickly.
Okay, there are no further questions on the bylaw. Let's move to the options on the last page for permit fees on page 29. Current fees. So this table is the current fees of the current that are in place for the current bylaw. And
Yes,
policy.
Chair. That is correct.
Okay. So is there any questions on this, or does a committee member propose to lower or raise any of these fees? Councillor Mallett?
Just a couple of points. First of all, on page 29, you go down by type to table and chairs, it says $22.50 per table. Now, everything else is per 12 months. What's the $22.50 per table per?
Per year.
So that should be per 12 months?
Correct.
Okay. Okay, thank you. Now, the other thing is, and this is kind of to do with the law, I think, when you're setting fees, and someone else raised it before, we're only allowed to set fees to recover costs, is that right?
Correct, Councillor. If you look at point 5 on the options paper, it outlines...
Where?
Sorry, on the second page, so page 30.
Yep.
Point 5.
Yeah.
It outlines that the Local Government Act requires us to set fees on a certain basis.
So this probably will jumps into what my thinking regarding the pop-up shops, and possibly, I don't want to speak on Andrew's behalf, but possibly what Andrew is concerned with. There is an issue with regard to fairness for people. You know, people who are out there paying, they've got a whole lot of facilities, they've got a cafe, they pay rent, they pay rates, they pay blah, blah, blah. And then a quote-unquote fly-by-nighter comes in, hooks into the busy nights when there's a footy game on or something like that, and then goes away again. And all he has to pay, or he or she has to pay, is $85 and something, or whatever that fee is. So in terms of equity, it would seem that's not fair, because that person is they have to apply for stuff, and there's council work. So I'd question whether or not these application fees, all of them, even reflect the cost of council staff doing the permitting, because $85 is pretty easy to burn that up to me in terms of staff time. I'm not sure. I don't know how much goes into doing one of these permits. But secondly, in terms of making a contribution, because that's what rates are. Rates is you paying for, it's our best effort to get you to pay for the city services you're using and the amenities and whatnot. Is there any way we can factor in for these pop-up shops or these mobile shops that they also pay more than just the cost of setting up the permit, but also the cost of the facilities and infrastructure, et cetera, that they are using, which might sort of balance up the equation?
The local council is entitled under the Local Government Act to set a fee structure that covers reasonable costs incurred in relation to the matter. So if your question is, can council review the fee structure and look at what are the appropriate cost components that should be included in the structure? Yes, council can do that. The current fee structure is what is currently provided for. If council wishes to review that fee structure, it is entitled to do that.
Okay, so the $85, is that supposed to reflect simply the time it takes for our staff to process a permit, or does it try and capture also the cost of the bit of land that the person standing on hawking?
Sorry, there's two component parts to each of those.
Yep.
One is an administration fee, which is our staff time to actually do the administration as part of receiving, checking and issuing the permit.
Yep.
And then
so that's the administrative
That's
cost.
the administration.
Yep.
$85 is the administration fee.
And you reckon that's about right?
I think I'm comfortable that that's accurate currently.
Okay.
And then the permit fee is the component that is for the use of the public space.
Okay, so there's a genuine effort to try and reflect that.
It's what's been
It happens to be a heck of a lot less than someone's rates, but you'd expect that because that's a building.
That's about actually put into two component parts: the administration time and the permit fee. Okay. The permit fee is for is effectively the rental of the public space.
But picking up on that, sorry, Councillor Miller, because I think you need to provide some clarity here, because the legislation says that we can't charge more than the reasonable costs to recover the time we spend in processing the application, right? That's the administration fee.
Yes.
The permit fee is not part of that legislative requirement, is it? The permit fee is something quite separate. I think there's a distinction.
So the permit fee, and I think I saw somewhere where it said the permit, some fee cannot be.
Yeah.
and
Because
I've
we're
lost it now.
charging
Somewhere
a,
it said
charging a
can't-
fee for our work, we can't charge unreasonable costs in that regard, so that's an admin fee. But the fee we charge for the rental, that's up to us. I think we need some clarification on that.
It's the same.
I don't think they're the same thing.
We can definitely provide clarification on that matter. The Local Government Act talks about fees,
Reasonable fees.
and it doesn't distinguish.
Yeah, no, I don't.
Councillor Mallett, on page 30, option 2, there's, because it would appear to me that it needs to be related to true costs, whatever fees we are setting. I suppose that's what reasonable is. You could look at, option 2 under there, loss of revenue. Most of the time, well, some of the time, mobile shops will be located, or could be located in car parks.
But no,
A reasonable cost, if we wanted to go down that track, would be the revenue lost by those car parks, and that's considerable. But we can't just, you're going to find out, come back to us, we can just randomly pick out a number, because, a fixed building has got to pay for water, some pay for refuse, things like that. Whereas possibly a mobile shop carries their own water and looks after their own refuse, etc. Okay, but you're coming back to us on that.
Well, so Chair, we did get in the BNI some examples of, although it's difficult, apples for apples, but there was a vast range of fees charged, weren't there, for mobile shops? You gave us some information on that, didn't you?
Yes.
And I mean that there's a vast range. Yeah, I think there's a difference.
I think just to add to Your Worship's comments, I mean, it probably comes down to what is definition of reasonable. I mean, if they park on a roadside edge, you could possibly charge them a share of the road costs and the footpath and the costs associated with that. I mean, it's probably, as long as there's a link between the space they occupy and costs that council may incur, you could probably factor in a number of costs. It probably it comes down to how far is fair and reasonable to link costs back to that fee that we're referring to. And they've given 2 examples on the staff report here, but I don't think that list is exclusive. There could be other things that you can bring to bear.
Yeah.
But I think in Angela's example, if they provide their own water, then clearly we wouldn't want to include a charge for water in there.
Okay, so, Your Worship.
No, I was just, my question was, have you got that information that gave some examples, and they're just looking for it now, because it did show there was a broad range of fees, that was my recollection. Do you have that, Kelvin? It was quite useful. It wasn't helpful because what it showed was a broad range, but I suppose it's helpful in that regard.
Probably didn't offer how they arrived at that broad range either.
No, well, I think that's my point.
Yeah.
I don't have that immediately to hand, but I can get it.
But some of them were quite a lot, weren't they? I think was Rotorua or someone, anyway, I recall. Anyway, if you can find that, that would be helpful. My other question is just on the no admin fee for some of these things. I wasn't sure why would we not charge an admin fee when we've got to process all of them? Like there's a processing cost for all of them, isn't there? On page 29.
It was only generally on the renewal application. All of the main work is done on the original application.
Okay.
And I guess we could have a quantum sum of $10 or $15 for the renewal, because if nothing has changed and we've done due diligence on the initial application, it would seem to me, and given that they occur yearly, we could actually be overcharging.
No, I was sort of thinking down here on page 29, we don't charge an admin fee for some of these things like busking and stuff like that, and we don't have fees for them to, because permits for the busking is new, isn't it? As in actually a physical piece of paper now.
No.
No?
No, they've always had that, and that's consistent again with other TLAs around the country. They don't charge for busking fees either.
Right, okay. I suppose
Or for charity collectors.
Right, okay. Oh, all right. Thanks.
Okay, Councillor Yong?
Yep. About the event in store, there's no administration fee and event booking, $46 per event. Now, if I go to the next page, 6.1 bullet point 2, as the permit fee set per event is $20 and then $100 for the staff time. So I don't know how that worked out. It's not matching.
Sorry, you're talking about two different aspects.
Oh, okay.
The one you refer to on page
29?
Page 29, that's for a market or a market stall that you referred to.
$46 per event.
That's correct.
Events and stalls and garden
Event-
places.
Yes, that's in garden place only. That's an existing provision that exists if you want to have an event or a stall in garden place.
So no matter how many stores?
Standalone process.
Yeah, okay.
Over the page,
Other.
At the footpath.
that's a new provision which has been recommended in the policy, which will allow people to use the footpath in front of their premises for reasons other than outdoor dining. For example, and it's one that was quoted, if you wanted to have a bucking bronco set up, provided it met the health and safety requirements, this is the provision that would do it. Alternatively, if you're a children's clothing store and you wanted to have face painting for a day or a week as part of a 1-year celebration, that would be how you would actually get access to that part of the footpath on a rental basis.
That's right, yeah. So maybe is that the word event is to be changed? Use another word? Because otherwise it will be confusing. Because
See, it's under other activities on footpaths.
Yeah.
So
You look at the
it's
heading
not
of
called that an event.
Well, it is an
But it is an
event
event.
because
Not activities or other word, because it will be confusing with you looking previous at another event.
if councillors believe it's confusing, we can change the word event to activities.
All right, thank you.
You got our answer?
Yes, Chair.
Great, thank you.
So, Section 150 of the Local Government Act prescribes fees that must be set through fees that are set by a bylaw. So, because these fees are being set under the bylaw, we need to prescribe to this section. And it talks about fees can be for a certificate, authority approval permit, or consent form inspection. And it says specifically that the fees must not provide for the local authority to recover more than the reasonable costs incurred by the local authority for the matter for which the fee is charged.
That's in your report, though. I
Yes.
thought you were bringing us information on what the Mayor asked.
Yes, so the
that's
clarification,
coming.
these fees are set by the bylaw, which is covered by Section 150, therefore they must comply with that Section 150 subsection 4.
So the benchmarking, have you got that?
Yeah.
Someone's
That's
Someone's gone to
okay,
get
so we've got
Okay,
10 minutes
yep.
to afternoon tea, so we can do that
Okay.
after afternoon tea.
All right.
Okay, are there any further questions on the options? Can I just ask when we get to it, what are you wanting from us? Because on page 30 there's option 1, option 2, option 3. Is option 1 then on page 29, that table is what you've worked out as reasonable fees for the permits, and is that correct?
Yes, so option, the preferred option is option 3 because it takes into account our current fee structure, which Calvin has said is a reasonable reflection of the time and cost to administer the fee. But we also think that we should include the option 2, which is the loss of revenue cost. If this mobile shop is occupying a public space where we would have had the opportunity to recover revenue.
We don't generally make revenue off public space, but we do off a car park. So when would that, if the committee decides to go with that option then, when we would need to see, because, you know, often these things, when you get it on a piece of paper, you balk at the result. So we would need to see that. So what's the process? If the committee decides, yes, we want to go for that, then I think that would have to come back again, wouldn't it? Or would that go to the finance company or annual plan?
So fees and charges can be set any time by council. We would recommend it goes to the finance committee. It can go independently by itself.
So it's a principle you're asking?
Yes.
Unless we decide to stick to the same fees that we've got now, which is on page 29?
That's correct.
Okay. Okay. question? Yep, councillor Forsyth.
Yeah, just have a question around option 2. So what happens if our car parking fees change? How do we cope with that? Because you've set that, fixed that based on $2 per hour for a standard business day, et cetera,
Yes, so we've calculated this as an indication of our current lost opportunity cost.
Yep.
Fees and charges can be reset at any time, so if council wanted to review those in another year's time when the situation may have changed, they're entitled to do that.
So that takes, I'm just thinking about the Central City Transformation Plan parking option that was put forward. I mean, that talks about free parking after 3 and reduced rates, etc., etc. I mean, I'd like to see some sort of flexibility in there, and not having people having to wait, because if we're looking about cost recovery and reasonable costs, etc., which we should be complying with under the Act, and if we're overcharging or undercharging, I presume it would be overcharging, seeing the direction that we're travelling in, with our parking costs, then
it would need to
we need
line
to
up.
be more flexible.
It would need to line up with the appropriate rates at the time. So
yeah, but it doesn't say that here in option 2. It's quite fixed.
No, I think it's I agree with you. It would need to be in line.
Absolutely, and not 12 months later at annual plan time. It needs to be in sync, basically. Yes. And there's no reason why we can't do that as a council. I mean, I think we use that as an excuse very often, the fact that, well, we're not doing that at this time of the year, we're doing that at a certain time of the year. Well,
fees and charges can be set any time from council, at any time at council, so we could review those at any point.
Okay, Calvin, did you have your information?
I'm still trying to find it.
Okay, that's okay. What I'll suggest is if we break for afternoon tea now, and then that gives the mover of the motion time to get that ready, and if you've got amendments as well, and then we'll come back, hopefully Calvin will have the information, and then we'll move to putting those motions, etc., on the floor. So 3:25, let's come back at, how long do you need, 10 minutes? Let's come back at 4:22.